America.
Small, lay a big hit and pass a kick the ball. This game is for us all. From Seattle down toward the Keys, this game is you, this game is me. Cats, dogs, and steer, be the tree. This game is America, so sing it loud with me. College football forever. College football forever. Downtown LA, Starkville City. 1 week you're up next, take a dip, run the rock or let it rip. This game is America. All say, can you sing it with me?
We just stepped on her feet with a hot-tail moving across her nose. Whoa, Nelly!
College football forever. College football forever. College football forever. College football forever.
College football is a year-round discussion with these two. Here's JC and Morgan. Mike Morgan of ESPN and JC Shurburtt of 24/7 Sports have you covered, beginning right now.
It is the college football anthem, as I like to think of it, and it is the show that is on campus 52 weeks out of the year. This one just happens to be a little bit extra special as we are 1 week away from the national championship game that'll take place right here in the Mecca, the ATL, the stadium behind me. For those of you that watch the show on YouTube, I've had this on for much of the way. I've mixed it up a little bit. That, of course, is the Benz, the stadium here in Atlanta, which has not hosted any Falcons playoff games, but will be instrumental in hosting a number of big games in college football. Everybody remembers, of course, the Peach Bowl with Arizona State and Texas. That was a classic. And we have other kickoff games. Remember, it wasn't that long ago, Notre Dame was in this stadium and knocked off Georgia Tech, as a matter of fact. Next year, Georgia Tech will also play here. And it's going to be a regular in the national championship rotation, as it were. But it'll be front and center. I've been putting that in the background for about 5 months. That's when we started talking about specifically this season in earnest, because it was getting underway. And now here we are. He is JC Shurburtt. You know him as Rudy. If you're watching his background, our producer is Phil Molinax, the Mad Dog, behind the proverbial glass. And we've got lots to chop up and get to. With all that being said, I say good morning for those of you watching live, and I say good morning to my cohort, JC.
Good morning, Michael Morgan. Glad
Oh.
to see you made it back from Columbia, Missouri safely.
Oh goodness. Let me just tell you something. And I know nobody wants to hear about the grueling travel of someone who gets to do what they love and call games on television and whatnot. But to go in a 5-day stretch from Atlanta to Norman, Oklahoma, in a snowstorm of sorts, and then go from this might have been one of the scariest flights of my life from OKC to Houston to eventually get to St. Louis before driving 2 hours to Como. That was interesting. But we made it. We got it in. I'm glad to be back home. There's still snow on the ground in Atlanta. Everybody knows we don't handle snow very well here. Not like where you are, Chicago, JC, where it's just like it's like nothing. It's just it's in every you know it's coming. They salt the roads, they pave the road. We don't do well here. But other than the people that had to sleep in the airport a couple days ago or wait 3 hours in the TSA line.
Oh God.
Yep.
It's my worst nightmare.
It's the worst nightmare. Again,
in that airport too, because
we are the only major top 10 city that doesn't have 2 airports because the people in South Atlanta they don't want it. They want to have a monopoly, and the leadership that votes on those kind of things, they've got the votes, so to speak. So you go to Houston, you go to Dallas, you go to Chicago, you go to New York, you go to LA, two airports. We are this number 6 city in the country in terms of population. We think it's a brilliant idea to say, let's just have one and brag about the fact that we're the busiest airport on the planet. People don't want to go to the busiest airport. People want to go to the most efficient airport, which we never are. But that's a diatribe for another time.
Yeah, people from Chicago are like, I don't see what the big deal is about Southern hospitality. And I'm like,
no, not at that airport.
Where have you been in the South? I flew through Atlanta, and I'm like, oh, no wonder. Yeah, I mean, look, Chicago's got to definitely. I mean, it hurts Atlanta's, I guess, argument about having that Southwest bought AirTran, and now they got a huge hub at ATL. They're even talking about building a big airport in Chattanooga and making it the second Atlanta airport. And that's a little too far, but it's the same thing down there with the interstate, Dawson County in the northern part. They don't want, it would be 685 or whatever. So, it would make a lot of sense because all the trucks wouldn't have to come straight through town or go around the god-awful road of 285. But those folks up in where Bill Elliott's from, we don't want none of that there, traffic and truck stops and all that. And I'm like,
a Bill Elliott reference.
Wow. Oh, yeah. Awesome Bill from Dawsonville. Yeah, I used to live in Gainesville, and Dawson County was in the fringe of our coverage area, so I know it well. But, yeah, so I don't know. I don't know what needs to happen down there. I think that we could probably have a podcast with an episode for every day for a calendar year to talk about the issues in Atlanta. But it is a great place to host a college football national championship game.
It is.
The airport, the Hall of Fame. There's a lot of stuff to do downtown. You have the 2 institutions in Atlanta that I know I'm going to get to when I'm in town Labor Day weekend, Johnny's Hideaway, and also the Claremont Lounge. I'm just kidding about that. Don't go there. Don't show up with your girlfriend or your kids to the damn Claremont Lounge and be like, JC Shurburtt highly recommended this. No, don't do it. I'm joking. I'm joking.
Not great for the kids.
I'm joking. But, and really, and we know, everybody knows I'm an SEC guy, and I take nothing back. I apologize for nothing for criticizing the committee and saying it sucked, because it did. I take nothing back for criticizing the seeding because, lo and behold, the number 7 and 8 seeds are meeting, and in a 14 playoff, the seedings really didn't matter, Mike, unless you got a tougher matchup. Like, in other words, had last year had Alabama gotten to play Washington and Michigan, Texas, we may have had a different title game, that kind of thing. But the seedings really don't matter if you look at the history of the 14, but they should have for this, and they ended up not. So, but 2 great schools. It's the 3rd year in a row they've played. I forgot they played last year in South Bend Notre Dame screwed it up and lost. And that's the game that Ryan Day called out a 92-year-old man. And then after he lost to Michigan, that same 92-year-old man released a video. They didn't realize Lou Holtz was on X, did he?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, the Ryan Day lost to Michigan again. Oh, what a shame that is. How devastating.
Lou just had a birthday.
I saw him.
88, I think, is officially his age. And if I'm not mistaken, that was one of and there were a couple games where Notre Dame and Coach Frazier had some clock issues. And
Coach Freeman.
Did I say Frazier? Sorry.
Well, no, there is a Marcus Frazier is a common name, and you've been calling basketball, Mike. So you get to be forgiven. There's a lot.
Yeah.
Hey, you can get it wrong here, brother. That's fine. Just don't get it wrong on Wednesdays and Saturdays or whatever.
Right, exactly. As long as I don't say Pitsnoggle.
We'll keep you straight. We'll keep you straight here.
Keep me straight, Key. My brain is in a lot of different places right now. But yeah, Marcus Freeman.
Yeah, he had some clock issues.
And as Brett McMurphy said, he checked the history. This will be the first time a team has a chance to win a national championship and lose to Northern Illinois in the same year. It's been an interesting road, but now he has got a chance to be on top of the college football world with Notre Dame, who has been in this spot before. I mean, they did make it to the national championship game with Brian Kelly. They did make it to a 14 playoff with Brian Kelly, but they haven't won a national title since the man you speak of, Lou Holtz, who just turned 88, won it in 88. That, of course, was the Tony Rice squad. I can't help but think of this, and we'll get into all the SEC. My goodness, like. I always knew there was some SEC fatigue, but what has gone on the last couple of weeks is just downright hatred and loathing, including a lot of people in our profession. And like you said, I'm not mad at you. Like, have your fun. Yeah, I mean, my background in the SEC is deep, going back to my introduction was family that went to Auburn, and I was the biggest Bo Jackson fan on the planet. Got to see him play a game in college in 1985 and get my first taste of what SEC football was all about. And of course, the majority of games that I've done for ESPN over the last 15 years have been SEC games. But I don't sit there and like wave a flag and get defensive. And I'm not like Joel Klatt talking about the Big Ten. Like that's never been my thing, and that's never been the thing on this show. Like people that have been listening to us for 8+ years know there's a lot of things we'd like to see successful that have nothing to do with the SEC. We would like to see. We didn't want the demise of the pack. We wanted to see the pack be relevant. Unfortunately, the people that led to its demise, and that's just history. I wanted to see Michigan be relevant with Jim Harbaugh. When everybody else wanted to fire Jim Harbaugh, we stood up for him. I want to see somebody in the Big 12 emerge. So all these things, I think some people believe that certain members of the SEC media or what have you, people that cover teams of the league, that we just sit up there all night and like get a voodoo doll of everything else in college football and hope that they demise. This is not like we're McDonald's and we want to drive Burger King and Wendy's out of business. I don't look at it that way. I look at the health of the sport that I love, and I want to see it prosper, not just in one region of the country, but throughout. Okay, that being said, one thing, if you know me, you know that for 20 years, I despised the BCS. For 10 years, I said I wasn't going to complain about a 14 playoff because it'd be better than the BCS. And for my money, it was, but I still wanted to see it expand. My magic number was always 8. We got to 12. Okay. For some reason, like the counter thing to say, and it's almost like I know what I'll be. I'll be the contrarian guy, and I'll be the smartest guy in the room if I say something like, the sport was better when we had the BCS. That's when we got the actual top 2 teams. That's what we need. This sucks. And then it was, the 14 playoff. Yeah, it's good. But, I mean, the BC. Okay, think about this for a moment. You mentioned the seeding. Ohio State an 8, Notre Dame's a 7. Now, we know they're going to change the seeding. You're never going to see a world where Boise State is a 3 seed again, or the champion of a Big 12 that wasn't very good, Arizona State, get a 4 seed. And Arizona State obviously showed itself quite well in that loss to Texas, but still, they didn't deserve a 4 seed. But here's the thing. Let's go back to what it would be in the BCS era, okay? Oregon would be the number 1. The number 2 would be Georgia. Now, as I said, the number 3 would not be Boise State or Arizona State, so what do you go to next? Texas. And then Penn State would be the 6. Do we agree on that? Under the BCS rules.
Under the BCS rules with the rankings, well,
remember now,
Mike, I don't know that they would have, if you're just doing top 2 in the poll, do you think they ranked Georgia with 2 losses ahead of Notre Dame and Penn State that were 11-1?
With the poll,
well, I'm sorry. Wait. Let me back up. Yeah, there's my brain and thing for today. Penn State lost the Big Ten championship game, so Notre Dame. It would have been Notre Dame or Georgia. That would have been the debate.
I think it would have been Georgia from the standpoint of
2 losses.
But back then the computers. I mean, the strength of schedule for Notre Dame was not good.
It wasn't close.
They were not going to have the SEC champion not in the top 2.
I tend to agree.
Okay, I mean, we could argue whether or not they would have had Penn State ahead of Notre Dame or Notre Dame ahead of Penn State. But let's just for the sake of the kind of the way we've had it, even in the 4-team playoff with a committee, we know for a fact with a committee, these would have been the same. So it would have been Oregon 1, Georgia 2, right? And then Texas 3, and Penn State 4. So essentially, you would have had 0 teams in the national championship game. You would have had, in the 4-team playoff era, you would have had 1, Penn State. You would have had no Notre Dame. You would have had no Texas, and you absolutely positively would have had no Ohio State. They wouldn't have even sniffed it, which I think we can all agree, no matter what happens next week, that is the most talented team. And that is why I picked them in the playoff. It's ridiculous how talented they are.
It's not close.
It's not close, right? Now, why they gagged it against Michigan, you'll have to ask Ryan Day. The Oregon game was very competitive and down the stretch. Speaking of clock management issues, Ryan Day did not exactly put his best foot forward in that one. But that's what we would have had. So in the BCS era for 20 years, the John Saunders of the world and the other apologists would have came on national television and said, to a guy like me, who said, this is not the best way to determine who the best team in college football is. And you know what they would arrogantly say? Kind of a smug look on their face. 1 will play 2. That was their answer for everything. The whole system was designed for what? 1 will play 2. Well, 1 will play 2. 1 and 2 based on what? Well, based on the 5 computer polls and the AP poll and the Harris poll, which has my mailman on it, and the art design major. Yeah, exactly. I remember the
Mr. McFeely. Mr. McFeely.
That was actually part of the poll. So in that era, for 20 years, you were told you got the true national champion when Ohio State and Notre Dame would have never even sniffed the BCS title game based on their resumes. And even in the 4-team playoff, which we've had the last 10 years, Ohio State and Notre Dame, people would have, again, smugly looked at you and said, well, they weren't good enough. Otherwise, they would have made the playoff. Where am I going with all this? There's been a lot of criticism about the early round matchups and this playoff's a failure. And I know we got a couple guys that listen to this show and as you call it, the manifesto, that they'll flood the chat box and tell you everything. Okay. That's okay. That's okay.
His heart's in the right place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just going to tell you that what you watched for those 30 years was not necessarily the best teams playing for the national championship. And for those that say, well, there's blowouts early, so therefore this thing sucks. Anybody watching the NFL playoffs? Most of those games yesterday were stinkers. The final one was great. The NFL has blowouts in the playoffs all the time. The BCS had blowouts. The 14 playoff. How many of the semifinal games are even remotely close? Hardly any of them. That's all part of it. You're going to have blowouts. That doesn't make the playoff a bad idea. Not at all. Those two semifinal games, if you didn't enjoy that, if you didn't love college football, watching those two games, I can't help you. I'm still all aboard. I still love it. And yes, I can't wait till next Monday night to watch the Buckeyes and the Fighting Irish, the true one will play two matchup.
Yeah, and look, I'll say this, a lot to unpack there, obviously, but I can unpack it. First and foremost, agreed on Ohio State. I said on the show and other shows, I thought when they played it in Eugene the first time, they'd blow them out. So that Rose Bowl result was much more in line. So now everybody doesn't think I'm a crazy glue sniffer, right? That guy, he's sniffing glue. You've been
eating them paint chips again there, JC?
Like getting paint chips as a chick. You lived under power lines, but so that's A. B, I don't think you abolish the system. I don't think we want to go back to anything. You remember, there's several years. The BCS, Mike, was like, all right, so the year Southern Cal or USC Southern Cal, I guess. I don't want to make my game.
They don't like to be called Southern Cal.
Southern California. Yeah. The Trojans, fight on. The year fight on whipped Oklahoma's butt. And I think we had Oklahoma national runner-up fatigue at the time. You can't tell me that Auburn team with Cadillac Williams and Ronnie Brown and
2004, four first-round picks.
Dude, Brandon Jacobs was the third team running back on that team.
Yeah.
They were loaded. And they would have at least, that was a 36-point spread against Matt Leinart and those guys. That would have at least been within 10, 15 points, right? Probably closer because I just think Auburn was just better football team, more battle tested than the old Oklahoma Sooners that year. Maybe I'm wrong, but the year Nebraska in 2001 played Miami because Tennessee and Florida couldn't get out of their own way at the end of the year. That wasn't the two best teams. That was the number one team against maybe the eighth best. That Nebraska team was garbage. And it showed. And they were just kind of happy to be there, So there's several years that would have happened. It might, and I thought too, though, the entertainment factor in the games really started picking up with Texas, Arizona State. Georgia Notre Dame was a 13-point spread, but that was a pretty intense football game. You kind of expected Georgia to rally, and it's kind of back and forth. And then Jack Sawyer is going to go down in history.
I had him on what he did dive,
against Texas. He's tremendous. So that's the second point. The third point is, there's a lot wrong with the format, like the seat from the buys to the people picking it to the way they seeded teams to what they emphasize. It's telling when you look at who made it and their strength of schedule. Right. You got to the whole seeding problem right now, and why some teams had a better matchup was they even ignored strength of schedule with the seeding. Because I went through Ohio State schedule and they played played a much more competitive schedule than Penn State. And yet they're eighth. Because they got 2 losses and didn't go to championship game. Burn. Tennessee and Texas, you could have made an argument for them not being in my opinion, out of the SEC. But the SEC's got to solve that problem. But all those are things we talked about. Yet I'm with you, Mike. I loved watching the games. I love the fact that we still got college football. There's some folks I've talked to that said, well, God, it just feels like it's dragging on and I think this is something that we're not used to. We're used to like last Monday wrapping it up. That's a wrap, cut.
Right.
And that's it. And so we're like, well, the NFL playoffs have started, but we got 1 week left and we still have college football game to watch. That's a little weird. And then that's just going to take adjustment. It's like the transfer portal. It's like, on my message board I own, when we change something, everybody freaks out.
Right.
For college football fans are creatures of habit.
Creatures of habit.
They freak out for like 3 days. Then everybody's eyes adjust and they move on about their business. You don't hear a word about it. So that's just kind of how it is. I'm that way too. I mean, I'm dealing with, I got a new monitor, one of those wraparound monitors, right? So I've got 2 workstations now, and I'm like frustrated because I can't type as fast. But in 5 days, I won't even think about it. So that's the thing there. And then finally about this whole SEC thing, I'm gonna send the haters a nuclear missile here to just explodes their entire argument, because I think there's a lot of cultural bias and jealousy that goes into it. I think there's certain people that aren't familiar with the South. They're either not familiar with the South and they turn their nose down at the South, and because normally all these people live elsewhere, or they are from the South and they're kind of, or they are familiar with the South and they're kind of jealous, or they have some allegiance to a non-SEC Southern team. And that those are the 3. You look at all these guys that are haters and gals, because there's a gal or 2 out there, and that's what they do. So here's going to torpedo your cultural bias, your regional bias, your hatred of the glorious South, which, by the way, has come a long way since the 1960s and is the most attractive place to live in the country now. And those are facts. Facts. Okay. Think about the number of significant players on these 2 rosters next Monday night and where they're from. Jeremiah Smith, where's he from?
South Florida.
Where is Quinshud Judkins from?
He's a South Florida kid, isn't he?
Alabama.
Alabama, that's right. I'm sorry.
Where's Riley Leonard from?
Alabama. Was it Hapeville or something?
Yeah, he was. That's
a great basketball player.
You know who found him, don't you? David Cutcliffe.
Cutcliffe, yeah.
Dude's a genius.
Yeah.
I'd almost hire him to sit in an office. Hey, David, did you watch those 30 quarterbacks? Who has no offers at a small school that we can go get and turn into an NFL? All right, let's go get him, Yeah. But I tell you this right now. I mean, Jaden Greathouse from Notre Dame is from Texas. Our guy Jeremiah Love is from an SEC state. Their injured true freshman 3-star offensive tackle, who they may miss, funny name, who started there all year. We talked about him before the A&M game. He's from where? The ATL.
But where's Jeremiah Love from again?
St. Louis, Missouri. Missouri's
Okay.
now an SEC state.
Yeah. No, it's still hard for me to. You're right. It's still hard for me to. Wrap my arms around that.
That's kind of hard to count.
Whenever you're there,
Missouri
you don't feel like you're in the South at all. But
I'm just going to say this: it doesn't matter. You can spin your team homer narratives all you want, your conference narratives all you want. The bottom line is the SEC is located in the football the best place for football in our entire country. Those states, even the small ones, put out more NFL players and NFL players per capita than any of them. And routinely, they stock rosters of the non-SEC teams. So you can sit there and say all you want. SEC still has the best players. They're always going to have the best players. They're always going to have the most passionate fans. They're always going to care more. And you can put it in your pipe and smoke it, no matter how Ward Manuel wants to, mess up barf a playoff up. And we end up with Notre Dame and Ohio State, which is fine. I think we actually this could be the 2 best teams in the country, Mike.
They've earned it. They've earned their way here.
This is, even if you were just kind of ranking them, had Notre Dame not lost to Northern Illinois and had Ohio State beaten Michigan and then gone and beaten Oregon again in a BCS format, I think those 2 probably would have gotten in over Georgia, because one would have been undefeated, one would have been 12-1 and avenged the loss. But so people can spin that all they want, but if how many players from and Southern teams have kids from Ohio and Michigan and Indiana and Illinois all the time. But what's the percentage of difference makers that are going crossing the border the other way is my question. So, that's just food for thought. And as a recruiting guy and a roster guy, and the transfer portal kind of deludes that. I mean, there's schools in the SEC getting kids from Indiana all the time and stuff like that. But it doesn't change the fact that the best football is in the South, and you're never going to change that. I mean, unless there's a population shift, but the South's growing. It's not getting smaller.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at the U-Hauls are all going to the same destination, and it's just part of the country. But you mentioned a key thing, and that is the portal. Like Notre Dame's not in this game without Riley Leonard. And a lot of people are just piling on Brian Kelly. I didn't realize the hatred for Brian Kelly was so severe. Brian Kelly was consistently competing for national championships at Notre Dame. But here's the difference. When you watch Notre Dame, this is where I became a believer, because I've been very reluctant to believe Notre Dame is this caliber of team to play for all the marbles. Because when you watched back in the day, when Notre Dame was in those title games or playoff games, you looked, and I talked to people that were actually on the field that were either covering for it, and even one coach that was in it. And you looked across the side and you saw Notre Dame's athletes on defense, and you said, no, that's not SEC caliber. That they don't have the speed, too many thick ankles. That speed is going to be exposed. Not exposed against Navy. It's not exposed against Stanford, but it's exposed in those games against those caliber teams. You watch Notre Dame this year, that is an Alabama, Georgia-like defense. And that is how they're winning games. That and Riley Leonard's legs and a beast mode of a running back and Love. And they've always had great tight ends at Notre Dame, right? And usually like one plus receiver. That's a matchup problem. But they've always had holes on the defensive end, and I don't see that this year. That's when I was like, oh, okay, this is a little bit. It's not about Brian Kelly. It's not like Marcus Freeman is drawing up these brilliant plays. Demrock's the offensive coordinator. I featured him on The Boss one week as a guy who has done a great job with that offense. And defensively, obviously that's where Freeman has made his bones, but their athletes are just better than those teams in the Kelly era. They have and I don't know, JC, you would know better than me, how much of it is portal, how much of it is 4 to 5 star recruits that have been on campus since they were 17, 18 years old. But I just know this, even a quote unquote novice like myself, who's never coached in his life, I can see a difference in athleticism in that defense. And it's showing up in every game.
When you look at their defense, Mike, they did a good job of hitting New Jersey's in the Northeast. Actually, that state, it's cold, so you don't have like a lot of amazing track times up there. But ask Joe Paterno and James Franklin about the talent in New Jersey. Even Greg Schiano that doesn't get it most of the time. Notre Dame's stolen some guys from over there. I just looked at their two deep. Their receivers. Faison, the lacrosse kid, is from South Florida. You had, I mentioned Great House is from Texas. They got a starter at linebacker from South Carolina, Jalen Sneed. They got a starter in the secondary from Texas. Florida, one of the corner spots. So they do hit that. And I did want to give a hat tip to New Jersey, because you can't just recruit. Like, all right, there's a kind of a myth out there that Ohio doesn't have any fast guys. As a state, Ohio has everything. Right. It is a top. Georgia's past it as far as numbers go, but it is a top 5 talent. It's what I call the breadbasket of the Big Ten. Like, you look at all the Big Ten rosters, and then they have, oh, by the way, a pretty competitive Group of 5 conference in the MAC, believe it or not, where there's mostly Ohio kids. It is a football state if there ever was one. So there's fast players there, but Ohio State gobbles them up. Your Michigans will take them and stuff like that. So it's hard to get, like, you have to kind of dip other places to find that much talent. And what Notre Dame was running into is, and that's why Brian Kelly left, it's as simple as there are more guys that can run and jump and that are athletic, that can play football in LSU's footprint than there are at Notre Dame. And it was, not to mention the academic challenges that coaches talk about. I think that's a myth and an excuse because there's lots of schools that are hard. The University of Florida is hard to get into and has unbelievable standards for football. You could make that work at Notre Dame. But it has. I mean, you look at their NFL players. But I think finding those guys in New Jersey, going south, I think, continuing to recruit the core out of the Chicago area to Illinois has built this roster in a different way than what Kelly was able to do. Brian Kelly, I mean, LSU's got a really good transfer portal class. It's LSU. It sells itself. Probably not the best recruiter. It's probably his guys, and when they brought Freeman in as an assistant, Freeman immediately made an impact on the recruiting show. Marcus Freeman is an elite recruiter.
Yeah.
He's elite in that, and he's always been elite in recruiting. I think he's grown as a head coach. I really not going to get into like the meat of it, but his answer to the question they asked him after the bowl game, I thought was appropriate and real and cool, where he kind of deflected the personal attention to the team.
Right.
There's stuff going on social media that Marcus Freeman is the first coach that's made people that hate Notre Dame not hate Notre Dame.
Yeah, I see that.
And and I do think somebody in the chat box asked Hayne, thank you, Hayne. Do you feel Freeman has improved as a head coach? I absolutely do.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes
maybe Ryan Day has too. Like it's never a finished product, right?
I think, dude, do you know Ryan Day is 47-1 against everybody but Michigan?
He's got a ridiculous record, but I must admit, and I will swear up and down, if they didn't get into this playoff, he would have been handed his walking papers right off the field that day after the Michigan game. Well, fair or unfair, doesn't matter.
There's no excuse for losing that game.
No.
I mean, I'll tell you, but just like there's no excuse for losing to Northern Illinois.
Correct.
I
mean, can you think, JC, I know we got to get to a break. Can you think if Notre Dame does this on Monday, can you think of any loss by a national championship team in the history of the sport that would even come close to a middle-of-the-road MAC team in Northern Illinois?
I can't. And now a future Mountain West team, which is a huge mistake, but I don't want to get into that. The only thing close I can think of is LSU in the 80s, because I remember, because I went to the Sugar Bowl basketball tournament that year, got a Sugar Bowl program. It was 86. They made the Sugar Bowl. They were 9-1-1 under Mike Archer. That's Tommy Hodson and Wendell Davis and those guys. And they were playing Nebraska. They got kicked in the teeth by the Huskers. But they it was a huge deal because LSU wasn't LSU then. And I remember looking at they were 9-1-1, and the one loss was to Miami of Ohio at Death Valley. And that's the only thing that's stuck in my mind that's similar to this Northern Illinois thing.
Yeah.
LSU's, obviously 9-1-1 was pretty good then, but they got killed by Nebraska. And then the next year they beat South Carolina in the Gator Bowl. But and then that was a good stretch for LSU at the time. But that's the only thing I could remember is that Miami of Ohio, which in the 70s under Dick Crum, they routinely beat big schools. But this was 1986. That was over. And so
that was a bowl game. This is a national championship game.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And that the bowl game was set up, but during the regular season, they lost. Yeah. It's LSU did not make it. I don't even know that the SEC, maybe they did win the SEC that year. I guess back then the SEC champ always went to the Sugar Bowl. I think there was a tie. I don't know what happened in it. I can't think of what happened in the SEC in 86. But that's the only result in my vast brain full of scores that I can remember for a really, really good team taking a WTF loss like
the only thing that comes to mind for me, correct me if I'm wrong, the year Ohio State won it with Urban, did they not lose to Virginia Tech that year?
They did.
And Virginia Tech was no joke. I mean, this is when Frank Beamer, not Shane, still had it going.
Yeah, Shane was on staff then because I remember seeing his Shane likes to celebrate. I remember seeing him running out to midfield after the win. Bud Foster sat there all summer and broke down their defense and had just the surprise game plan and stopped them cold. And Virginia Tech played well on offense that night. They pulled out all the stops for the victory. And then that was a long, like a death march for Ohio State because they didn't know if they were going to get in. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was that the 24? They won it all that year with Cardell Jones. Was that year?
Yeah, I believe that's the same year.
2014?
In 2014.
Yeah, and then
that was not an undefeated team. And
maybe it's 2013. Was it 2013?
Well, we can look it up during the break. But
yeah.
I'm just trying to there's nothing
it was
that
because they made the playoff. It was 14, and then they beat Alabama,
and then they shocked the world, beating Alabama, and that's where Urban went to the next level of okay, this guy's Hall of Fame coach. Like he did a good job at Florida, but when he went to Ohio State, and Ohio State was the program that always was sexy in the way of all the glitz and glamour and pageantry, and yes, they had talent, but they were never really a factor for championships in our era. And all of a sudden they did it in Urban. Well, we know the rest.
They were runners up. I mean, they won it that one year. They upset Miami in the Fiesta Bowl, but that was one of the biggest upsets ever. And remember when the pass interference penalty in 02?
In 02 under
Tressel's second year. And then they were like always in the BCS title game and would get beat down.
Right.
And you know, Ryan Day's 47-1 against everybody else. I don't think that's right. He was the head coach at Ohio State in 2020 and they lost to Alabama. Maybe 47-2.
Whatever it is,
maybe it's in the regular season.
It's an amazingly good number.
One of those losses was a 1-point loss at the stroke of midnight to a great Georgia team when they had C.J. Stroud.
Classic game, yeah,
dude. Yeah, I mean, so look, man, he's a good coach. I think.
I'm still not there.
The maize and blue. Just
I don't know if he's a good.
I mean,
he might be. He might be.
The core, even if he's not, their coordinators are good.
Yes. And that's where we are now.
Why did you want to know what happened to Michigan? I think this team's a $20 million team. I mentioned some of these kids are not from Ohio. Many of them aren't. I think that's A. I think B. So then there was a lack of focus until they played Tennessee all year. So the lack of focus got them. Michigan, all they can do to beat you is just be more physical. And so they're just going to try to beat you up. They didn't want any part of that. And then I think Ryan Day was trying to prove a point because Michigan has beat them up physically the last 3 years. And I don't know if he dictated it to Chip Kelly or Chip was in on it because this is very unchip. Ohio State just ran the ball over and over. And they didn't try to throw it. They didn't try to get the ball to receivers. That's going to get you beat, man.
That was a caged animal coordinator hire.
Yes.
I think getting Chip Kelly was brilliant.
Ohio State had a caged animal offseason, dude. I mean,
the entire offseason, yeah. They were just handing out dollar bills like they were Gordon Gekko, and it's paid off so far. All right, we've got to get to a break. JC5. Yep. Oh, go ahead.
Before we get off Notre Dame, Ohio State, because we're going to talk about we're actually a show on game day most likely next week, I think, because it's Monday. But I'll say one more thing. Notre Dame against Georgia. They had played Georgia twice a few years back, 2 close losses. They were due. Ohio State, last year, they probably should have won. The year before, it was the opener in Columbus. Everybody thought Ohio State was just going to kill them. It was very competitive. Don't underestimate the Notre Dame is due theory in this football game. I think they are at a disadvantage, but they're due.
I don't disagree with that at all. The fact that Notre Dame hasn't won a title since 1988, yeah. I mean, we always talk about them like they're a premier program. It's about time they have some receipts for that. Maybe they will a week from now. We'll have JC5 receipts when we come back. It is JC and Morgan presented by MG&A Wealth. Back after a quick timeout. Mike here for our friends at MG&A Wealth. It's never a bad time to have someone on your side for all your financial needs. You need a trustworthy partner who has a true understanding of your situation in order to help you with smart and practical solutions. Since 1984, MG&A Wealth has helped their clients manage not just their wealth, but their lives. Today, as a nationally recognized wealth management firm, their team of pros remains dedicated to serving your best interests with an emphasis on personal attention and customized
customized solutions. MG&A Wealth has clients all across the country, and they all get results. Don't put it off any longer. Call our friends at MG&A Wealth at 954-289-9000. That's 954-289-9000. MGAwealth.com is the website. They do more than manage wealth. They help manage lives.
Blow on energy? Struggling with inflammation and poor digestion? Try Encapsulate 6 Mushroom Blend and get back in the game. Our blend is specially formulated to promote overall wellness and maximize health benefits using 6 powerful functional mushrooms. Our science-forward approach offers the most potent and bioavailable mushroom supplement on the market, backed by third-party testing to ensure safety and efficacy. Order online on Amazon or encapsulateusa.com today to start your journey to better living. Enter promo code JCM for $10 off.
We're passionate about making sure that the Nest and Wild mattress is the best it can be. Made well and made right here in Tupelo, Mississippi. So how can we do all that? Work. Hard work. And that means something. The Nest and Wild mattress is a movement. It's a pride in where you come from and where you're going. So get comfortable, because this movement is just beginning.
Game is America. Oh, say, can you sing it with me? College football forever. College football forever.
And now back to JC and Morgan. College football forever.
Well, I guess Mike's gone. Don't know what happened there, but this is JC Shurburtt for 24/7 Sports, and I got the JC5 for him, and he is right there.
Sorry about that. I don't know what's going on. I keep kind of cutting in and cutting out.
It's the internet, dude. These days, these companies, they want to charge you and keep going up on prices, and the quality keeps declining. And I am at the old man yells at cloud age. I understand that. I'm going to complain about things. But, dude, I mean, come on. I mean, this happens. I mean, I've upgraded 6 times, and it happens to me every day. And I have 2 different. I have a Verizon and Comcast.
Comcast is awful.
And they're like, well, maybe you should use a cable instead of wireless. And I'm like, you know, it's going to cost me what, $2,000 to wire my house or more? There's no jack here. This thing was built in the 70s. It's a split level like the Brady Bunch from the 70s.
Yeah.
For God's sake, man.
Hey, real quick before we get into the JC5, thoughts and prayers to the family of one Bill McCartney. Bill McCartney passed away today, or maybe it was late last night. I'm not sure. But either way, there's certain eras in time that you remember if you're old enough. And we were kids at the time, but we were certainly college football fans at the time. Those Colorado teams under McCartney, the 89 team, 11-1 Orange Bowl, 90 team, 11-1 national champions. They beat, speaking of Lou Holtz, they won that title game 10-9. They kicked to the Rocket Ishmael, who you can't write the book on college football without having at least part of a chapter on him and how explosive he was. He returned a kick for a touchdown. They called an illegal block. It was one of those few moments where Notre Dame did not get the call. And then 91, it started to slip a little bit. They went to 8-3-1, and 94 was his last kind of banner year where they went 11-1 and won the Fiesta Bowl. But that's when Colorado, that's what they're obviously trying to get back with Dion. But Colorado was a national power, and they were so fun to watch. And McCartney was the orchestrator behind that. Gary Barnett, who we've had on the show, who actually kind of broke the news that they were leaving that conference, which really started the whole domino effect of the demise of the pack. But I'd worked a few games with him on national radio, and the admiration and the reverence that he spoke of his days working under Bill McCartney. Everybody who worked under him, a lot of that coaching tree, they just loved the man, not just respected the coach. So we lost a really good one today. Bill McCartney, who had a terrific run at Colorado.
Yeah, from the Bo Schembechler coaching tree at Michigan, 8 years at Michigan before he took that. I remember him as number one, a very spiritual Christian guy that backed it up with life. You know, some people don't. So,
Right.
he does. Some people love to talk about it when it's convenient, but he lived it, and he founded Promise Keepers. That was a big deal for those church going types back in the day. He wrote 5 books. He walked away from coaching on his own. You know, he was at the top. He didn't get fired. He didn't resign. The program slipped to 8-3-1, 9-2-1, 8-3-1, then back to 11-1, and finished third in the country in '94. He left it as an absolute power. Kind of had the formula, and yeah, sometimes when you get back to recruiting, it's like, Mike, there's a formula at Michigan because you have a small base of talent and you have to go elsewhere, right? And I think he learned that at Michigan. And then the genius of what he did, they were there in the Big 8, Big 12, probably I would guess the Big 12, but the Big 8 last year was 94. So he ended up going, okay, where are we close to? Close to LA, and we're close to Texas, and we play Texas schools and or play Oklahoma schools, stuff like that. So we're going to recruit the crap out of Texas and recruit the crap out of Los Angeles, and then get these whatever in-state guys we got. And that's been the formula at Colorado for years. I mean, that they made a living off of that. I remember the tragedy where the father of his grandchild was his quarterback, Sal Inessi. They had cancer, and I think passed away in the middle of the '89 season. And they ended up losing. They lost to Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl that year. But that I remember seeing that all over. They didn't have game day back then, but CBS College Football Today and all that good stuff. So I remember it well, man. That was when I was first became a fan of the sport, '86. Colorado was one of the first teams that I was like, man, they're very, very good.
No doubt about it.
He was his own guy. He's a great man, and he went out on top. And I mean, could have easily gotten back in, probably, especially his first 3 or 4 years. And never heard a word from him. Kind of went out on his own.
Just focused on his beliefs and helping men, and specifically men in that area. So, all right, let's break in. We're going to go tempo here because we're running behind. JC5.
It's time for the top topics in the sport. We bring the JC5. Number 1.
All right, ye quarterback guru. What happens to Quinn Ewers?
He's got to go. This is Arch Manning's year, and Quinn doesn't have enough sweat equity in the way of results. And that sounds way too critical, but it's just not enough to hold off the guy that everybody in Austin wants to see another year, and that's Arch Manning. So you either go for the NFL, and his stock has not done well this year. You know, the story of the NFL draft is going to be, okay, we now know Carson Beck's not even going to go to the draft. His stock plummeted so much. He's going to take $4 million, hang out with the Cavender twin, maybe get another Lambo, and hopefully have better results than he did in Athens this year. His stock went down. Jalen Milroe's stock went up, and then it went way down. I think Jackson Dart's stock actually went up, but it's going to be Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, likely the top 2. So Quinn Ewers would be at best a mid-round guy, a guy that was once considered a Sherlock first-round pick, or he could take millions of dollars and go elsewhere. And keep in mind, a rookie quarterback, this is not the Sam Bradford days. You don't make millions of dollars your first year in the NFL, particularly if you're not like a top 10 pick. So for a guy like Carson Beck, that's more money by far than he would have made if he was, say, a third rounder for somebody. And that might have been a reach. So I think Quinn Ewers just has I don't know his financial situation, but he's already made more money than most college kids ever made. He can either transfer somewhere or he can go pro, but I cannot see him going back to Texas knowing full well he is not going to be the guy.
Number 2.
I got to get that right.
Breaking news?
Yeah, we got some breaking news I'm going to ask
Okay.
you about. So Clemson has hired a new defensive coordinator coming from Penn State, Tom Allen, the former Indiana head coach, former Ole Miss assistant.
Yeah.
Penn State's always pretty salty on defense. Thought they had a lot of talent this year, definitely. And I like Tom Allen. I think he's a good coach. Your thoughts about the Tigers? Because the Godwin who replaced Venables was basically Venables. This is a different style of defense. Dabo kind of making a move toward a change on that side of the ball. I mean, in philosophy, he obviously fired the guy earlier, but making a change in philosophy.
Yeah, well, like you said, when I think of Tom Allen, I think of his job as the head coach at Indiana, and he had a couple of breakout years. Michael Penix was part of that equation, and then it went down south. And now considering his age and considering how the last few years wound up at Indiana, he's probably coordinator for life, and that's okay. A good coordinator does very well, very, very well. So I'm solid hire. They're trying to capture the lightning in the bottle that they had with Venables, and that is something that is so hard now to keep a staff together the way Dabo did, to have guys not leave for other programs when they clearly are being suited to do so. So now, since then, I mean, all the talk about, well, they haven't been the same because he doesn't want to go in the portal. And I'm not saying that's not a factor, but I think the bigger factor is he's lost his lifeblood because Dabo was never a play caller. Dabo was a wide receivers coach. And Dabo did all those intangibles to elevate that program. And then eventually they started getting players, and then they had really good coordinators. And that drew up really good plays. So they're trying to find that again. I don't know if Tom Allen's the answer or not, but the hire on the surface makes sense.
Number 3.
All right. Let's talk about Missouri since you just got back from there. I've said it before. Transfer portal rankings leave a lot to be desired right now. I had a meeting in November about this at 24/7 Sports. There's big changes coming, but I'd be remiss to say, you talk about Missouri. I think one of the big reasons that thing is sustainable, or has been sustainable for Eli Drinkwitz the last 2 years, is his work in the transfer portal. There are some folks that believe this is the best transfer portal class in the SEC. They did lose some good young talent they recruited out of high school that kind of on the undercarriage, underbelly, if you will. But they got Kevin Coleman from Mississippi State to come in and replace Burden and those guys, and some good players. Ahmad Hardy, the running back from Louisiana Monroe, is one of the best running backs in the portal. Your thoughts on Eli Drinkwitz and Mizzou and kind of how they've been able to sustain it through the portal, because it's different than what Ole Miss does. They're not a portal necessarily heavy every class. It's all portal team like Ole Miss. They kind of go to lower levels and sneak around and get guys, and lo and behold, they're 21-5 the last 2 years.
Well, sometimes you look back, and maybe Missouri stays a 10-win team. I have my doubts. But you look back at the things that had to happen for that to go right. Luther Burden, that's the kind of player for years they were losing at Mizzou. They got him. They locked him down. Game breaker, difference maker. Brady Cook was a quarterback that was perfect for them. Didn't make many mistakes. Gamer, clutch kid, perfect. They got 2 years ago, their best year. They had a Division II walk-on running back in Schrader, who, by the way, I just saw got some reps in the NFL during the final week of the regular season. and he winds up leading the SEC in rushing. And then that 2 years ago team had a bunch of NFL guys, had like 5 guys drafted. This year, I thought they benefited greatly from having a very weak conference schedule, which is going to come up again and again and again, that every league is going to have to find a better way to make sure there's not that big of a disparity in conference schedule within the conference. It just is. I mean, you look at what Georgia played, you look at what South Carolina and Florida played versus what Missouri and Texas played, and it's not apples to apples at all. So look, Eli's a great story. He was on the hot seat a couple of years ago. Now they love him. You go to Como, and you just feel like they're in love with him. He's in love with them, and it's a marriage made in heaven. So we'll see if they can keep it up. But I think he's done, in terms of player talent acquisition, that they did find some money. They found some big donors to help with that fund. You keep telling me, JC, and I don't mean to get off on a rant or a tangent.
That's okay.
You keep telling me that in addition to the $21 million that we all know everybody's going to have to dole out, right? And the overwhelming majority of that's going to go to football, as it should. Welcome to the real world, folks.
About 15 of the 15.5 of the 20 is what most schools are doing.
Right. And that 20 is going to escalate the next couple of years. I don't know, up to 22, 22 and a half, whatever it is. And then when the next TV contract hits, it'll be even more. But you keep mentioning the NIL world, which we all know has never been NIL, and I predicted on this show countless times it was never going to be. It was going to be artificial demand. It was not going to be true name, image, likeness like every other walk of life actually does. It was nothing more than pay for play, pay for stay. That's what it was. And the highest bidder was just going out there and winning. And I don't care how many autographs you sign at the car dealership, you're not signing, $3 million worth or whatever. But you keep telling me that that's going to be cracked down on. Like they're actually going to have to prove true market value NIL, and I'm still raising my hand and saying I don't know. I don't know if you can really prove that. I don't even. Is the NCAA going to be able to crack down on that?
There's ways around it. Well, it's not the NCAA. It's the settlement of a federal court system.
Right.
I mean, you can't defy a federal court. That said, what you're going to have to do on the collective end of things, Mike, is become a marketing and promotional company and find opportunities to where you can take the funds you have and pay your players for legit NIL type of stuff. That's easier said than done in a lot of ways. Like in some cities, you're uniquely positioned to do that. In some, you're not. So I don't really know how that's going to work out. That's a good topic for summer.
I know. Like I said,
summer, the season, not your wife. I'm sure if she was in charge, everything would be running smoothly.
It would be.
She's just like that.
Yes.
But it's that's the deal there with that. But what's going to happen is somebody's going to sue and say, well, market value is whatever somebody wants to pay, and then it'll get blown up.
Right.
But if it holds like it is, that's the thing. Most schools, though, estimate that with legit NIL, they're going to need to generate about 3 to 7 million across the board to be in addition to the 20.
Just for football or every sport?
for every sport.
Okay.
The football, like I said, most of the football, it's not that the football programs are going to suffer with this, because most schools, I mean, I know we heard Ohio State spent $20 million. Well, okay, whatever. I mean, there are teams that beat Ohio State this year. So you're not, there's no super team. They have the best roster in the country, I know, but, and they got some pieces with that money that they went out and like Judkins and those guys. And they matter, but Jeremiah Smith was like what they're starting to call homegrown, right? Oh, well, he signed with Ohio State and they've developed him however much you really need to be developed. And so I think everybody thinks it's going to go to a $50 million payroll in college football. It's ridiculous. Go ahead and pay a bunch of 18-year-olds that much money and see what happens. And Ohio State, actually, with their stated payroll, they're the exception, not the rule with some of these teams that overspend. And so what's going to happen is, everybody's going to kind of be right there. Now it's up to the school and the coaches and I guess and the administrators to determine who individually gets what. So that's a GM kind of job. But it's your basketball programs, because there's some basketball programs that are spending 7-8 million in NIL. Well, if you have a football program on campus, that's generating 6 times the money, basketball is going to have to find the money somewhere else. That's a greedy sport, as we all know.
Not everybody has a Tyson's chicken.
Yeah, there's certain college baseball
0-3.
programs that aren't going to, when you have to go legit NIL, that aren't going to get it. Because there's some schools that are paying a lot of money where baseball is kind of like the 4th most popular, school. I'm thinking really mainly about Florida. Great baseball program. Yeah, the Gator fans show up when they're winning. Is it like a Mississippi State?
No,
probably not
at all. They're way behind football
and look, but that's that sport too, though, with the fact that they're all going to be on scholarship now. Yeah, that may buffer some of that, and then women's basketball will get a fair cut at some. That's not a revenue sport, neither is baseball, but they'll dole it up, however, per conference. But what's going to happen though is this: it's going to be there's going to be a lawsuit, and then an injunction, and then we're back to like, will you get revenue share and unlimited NIL? And then I think it's just going to get stupid. Hopefully it doesn't, because there was an agent on social media the other day that this guy, like, apparently a Tulane fan, hurt his feelings on social media. And this guy, no background, no law degree, just calls himself an NIL agent. So he's arguing that he should take 20% because in the NFL they take 5%, but those dollar amounts are much larger, and so it's really the same thing. I'm like, dude, you were that. Yeah. And Josh Pate retweeted it and said, well, this is an example of college players are too dumb, so they'll swallow this. And so that guy, any person that takes a selfie in front of a NetJet private jet looking all serious, don't sign with that guy. Here's a PSA. But these greedy people are out there, and they're going to push unlimited. So we'll see what happens. But right now, if the lawsuit settlement becomes the rules, there will be a third-party enforcement arm. And you're talking fines, forfeits, ineligibility, all that good stuff. Outside of the NCAA, it's going to take care of the NIL violation. So we'll see how that goes.
All right, next one.
Number 4.
All right, tell me what's going to happen with Miami and Carson Beck. What's your outlook on the Canes now?
He's not Cam Ward. Cam Ward was whoever was going to get Cam Ward last year, that was the big winner. I don't know if Carson Beck makes you the big winner if you're Miami. Now, look, for whatever reason, Carson had an off year. If you go back to what he did 2 years ago, he looked pretty damn good. He also had Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers, who were 2 ridiculously talented players that did exceptionally well in the NFL. Helped Brock Bowers set records. Ladd McConkey nearly went for 200 yards in a playoff game the other day. I have no idea what Miami's receiving core looks like next year. They lose the Restrepo kid, who was clearly their number 1 this year. So, I can justify it because you don't win without a quarterback in college football. It's just like the NFL. I've been saying it for years, and it's never been more true. So not knowing what else was out there, JC, if you don't get Carson Beck, who else was Miami going to get? And I think you're going to
go with Emory Williams, probably.
Yeah. And where did he go?
He's there. He played the second.
Oh, no. I thought you meant
another
Pop-Tarts
guy. Bowl. Nah, they'd have just probably gone with him.
Yeah, no. I'm saying if you because Miami is now set up the way Ole Miss is set up, the way a number of programs are set up. They're not there to recruit 17-year-old quarterbacks and groom them and watch them learn on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not doing that. Colorado's not going to do that in the future now that Shurburtt is gone. They're going to be programs that literally every couple of years it's go to the waiver wire and find an established quarterback and not have to teach a young man on the fly. That's where Miami is. That's where Ole Miss is. That's where a number of programs are. Now, Ole Miss does have a homegrown product this coming year. I'm pretty sure he is going to win.
They like him.
They like him a lot. But for the most part, they are a portal program, and my guess is their next quarterback will be a portal guy, and Miami will keep going portal. And there's a lot of programs portal for quarterbacks. And I can't get mad at you. It's the same model of basketball. Older is better. Well, unless you have like just this immense talented guy that can burst on the scene, if you want to play for a championship, I don't mean just be good. I don't mean just be like 8-9 win good. If you want to play for a championship, you can't afford to have a quarterback that's still figuring things out the first half of the year. So I can understand the move. Do I think that we got to get past the point, just like we do in every professional sport. It's like getting mad at the middle reliever in Major League Baseball with an ERA of 4.85 that's making $9 million a year. Does it make sense? No. Or the guy in basketball that can't hit a jump shot past 20 feet and he's making $14 million a year. It doesn't matter whether you think Carson Beck is worth that kind of money. It's supply and demand. There were not a ton, correct me if I'm wrong, not a ton of high-level portal quarterbacks this offseason. There's some, but none the likes of the pedigree of Carson Beck. So I think it's a good move for Miami overall. I just don't think he's Cam Ward. Next up.
Number 5.
Okay. Give me your take on the Big 12 next season. Are we going to see Arizona State sustain it, Colorado and Iowa State? Or you think the Utahs of the world that did not have such a good year? And I like actually how Kansas got up off the mat. Your take on the outlook of the Big 12 is the zaniness going to be in place for a while? I say yes, but
I say yes, and I'm loving every minute of it. Now, look, I think Kenny Dillingham's the best coach in that league, and I'm bullish on Arizona State moving forward. It wasn't just Scattaboo. I mean, they had other players, and they're just really well coached, and he just seems to me like a difference maker. I'll be very curious again what Dion does without the top 2 athletes on the field every week in the Big 12 because they're both gone. I'll be curious to see, does a program like Baylor become relevant again? I know they had a better year, but they weren't a true Big 12 championship competitor this year. Is UCF ever going to be good again? Gus Malzahn leaves them high and dry, and they get their prodigal son back in Scott Frost. I think it's going to continue to be the most unpredictable Power 4 league, and I'm here for it. I love every minute of it. I think it's exciting. I think it's fantastic. And the fact that I don't know who's going to win it next year, I'm cool with that. And I'm cool with the fact that concludes the JC5. All right, final timeout. We'll wrap things up on the other side, JC and Morgan.
Low on energy? Struggling with inflammation and poor digestion? Try Encapsulate 6 Mushroom Blend and get back in the game. Our blend is specially formulated to promote overall wellness and maximize health benefits using 6 powerful functional mushrooms. Our science-forward approach offers the most potent and bioavailable mushroom supplement on the market, backed by third-party testing to ensure safety and efficacy. Order online on Amazon or encapsulateusa.com today to start your journey to better living. Enter promo code JCM for $10 off.
Mike here for our friends at MG&A Wealth. It's never a bad time to have someone on your side for all your financial needs. You need a trustworthy partner who has a true understanding of your situation in order to help you with smart and practical solutions. Since 1984, MG&A Wealth has helped their clients manage not just their wealth, but their lives. Today, as a nationally recognized wealth management firm, their team of pros remains dedicated to serving your best interests with an emphasis on personal attention and customized solutions. MG&A Wealth has clients all across the country, and they all get results. Don't put it off any longer. Call our friends at MG&A Wealth at 954-289-9000. That's 954-289-9000. MGAwealth.com is the website. They do more than manage wealth. They help manage lives.
We're passionate about making sure that the Nest and Wild mattress is the best it can be. Made well and made right. Right here in Tupelo, Mississippi. So how can we do all that? Work. Hard work. And that means something. The Nest and Wild mattress is a movement. It's a pride in where you come from and where you're going. So get comfortable, because this movement is just beginning.
This is JC and Morgan on the Chief Sports Network.
College football forever.
We're back.
We are back. Okay. Good enough. Again, my internet is doing weird things during the commercial breaks. I think it's my internet. I don't know. Doesn't matter. We're good. We're cool. All right, final few minutes. I had to do just a quick deep dive. This playoff is going to provide some names that you'll never forget, even for teams that don't win it all. We mentioned Scattaboo and what he did in that memorable performance, wound up being the MVP of the Peach Bowl without even winning the game. And I don't know if Ohio State's going to beat Notre Dame a week from now, but Jack Sawyer made the play. I mean, it's going to be remembered for the rest of his natural-born life when he returned a fumble in the fourth quarter on a strip sack. So he stripped you get credit for the sack, you get credit for the forced fumble, and then you get credit for the return of 80-plus yards. So I must admit, JC, I didn't know much about Jack Sawyer, the finance major out of Columbus, Ohio, the 22-year-old, the 6'5", 260-pound linebacker. So I had to do a deep dive. I had to go ahead, put on the scuba gear, and find out where in the heck did this guy come from. Like I said, he's a hometown product. He is the guy that after Ohio State lost to Michigan at home, he's the guy that said, no. You are not planting the flag at midfield. You're not doing it. Not on my watch, he said. And I thought maybe that was the last we were ever going to see of old Jack Sawyer. But Jack Sawyer made the play amongst all plays, a hometown product, a guy that has been an Ohio State fan his whole life. And I don't know if he's much of an NFL prospect. It looks like a pretty good specimen, actually. But I do know this. Jack Sawyer will never pay for a drink in Columbus, in Cincinnati, in Cleveland, in Youngstown, in, I don't know, think of another Ohio town, JC, that perhaps you have driven through in your recruiting days. But Jack Sawyer will be a legend in the Buckeye State forever.
I went through Dayton for the first time ever in November, driving from Chicago to South Carolina. Never go that way. It was you kind of cut through Ohio and then into West Virginia. I drove all the way across West Virginia, middle of the night, pouring down rain, twisty, turny, twist. The whole state is mountains. I'm sure it's beautiful, but geez. Anyway, yeah. But yeah, Ohio, the state of Ohio has so many like cities that are good sized cities. And you kind of start thinking about history and why and I looked up, I literally, when we stopped for gas, Googled while I was pumping gas, why do so many people move to Ohio? I'm like, why did they decide this place sucks? Because you got a kind of a frozen lake up north. I'm sure it's nice in the summer, just like Chicago. And then just nothing. It's not really, how did you arrive at building this great state? And the first thing that came up was it's cheap to live there. So I guess people were escaping cost of living even back when Ohio was settled. Yeah. There's a lot of great American companies and industry located in Ohio. And my mother's from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So obviously we're very familiar with the population of that state because half of it comes to Grand Strand every summer. So, but yeah, that's Jack Sawyer is a legend, a Buckeye legend. Put him on the wall. That was, and I like the way he plays football. I'm a fan of Jack Sawyer's, so happy to see him, make a big play just individually as a player that I admire.
No doubt, no doubt. As the NFL playoffs continue, I got to say, Jaden Daniels, if LSU had any semblance of a defense, that kid should have been playing in the playoff. He is something special immediately. It's kind of funny when you think of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now. Okay, you start with the big two, at least, well, the big three. You start with Mahomes, covered him at Texas Tech. I had no idea he was going to be this good. None. It was just like, okay, another Texas Tech quarterback putting up numbers. Big deal. Josh Allen, Wyoming. They weren't even good his final year at Wyoming. He had no offensive line. He had no receivers still. Lamar Jackson. Now, Lamar won the Heisman at Louisville, but Louisville wasn't exactly great. And I would say Jaden Daniels is going to quickly move into that upper tier if he's not already. And Jaden Daniels didn't get to play for some of the highest stakes. He started at Arizona State under, you play to win the game and put your program on probation. Well, they didn't actually get on probation, but they cheated their rear ends off during COVID and somehow got off with it.
Thanks to Antonio Pierce, who's already been fired as the head coach of the Raiders.
Of the Raiders, yeah. And then Jaden goes to LSU, and again he put up great numbers. He certainly got my Heisman vote, but just goes to show you don't have to play for the chance. And Riley Leonard's not going to be a high pick, and we don't have like a surefire stud NFL quarterback in this national championship game.
Nah, there wasn't really in the whole playoff. I mean, it wasn't. There were a lot of disappointments at quarterback this year, which is why I think Miami is going to be a disappointment. I don't think that catch up with Carson Beck's going back in the bottle. I think he's made too much money. I think that Miami is a situation where they need self-starters. I don't know that he is. I think he's going to count his Benjamins and play another year of football. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. I would put the odds higher that Carson Beck never takes a snap in the NFL than I would that he is some first-round draft pick. And I will eat my word. Remind me, I said this when he lights up everybody and wins the Heisman, because that's how things go.
Yeah.
But I would put that. I got another crazy prediction I wanted to get in before we go.
All right.
I predict Alabama will be starting true freshman Keelan Russell at quarterback by October of next year.
Okay.
And that's more about who Russell is than really about the guys they got there now.
Okay.
Just right. I want to put my marker down on.
Not a big Ty Simpson guy.
It's okay. It's good.
I have no feel for that whatsoever. I thought Jalen Milroe made a mistake not coming back. But
they flipped this guy. Well, he wasn't going to come back and play for Alabama. I mean, their fans completely.
They annihilated
talking about
them.
the toxic fans on social media.
They annihilated
well, they're not used to it. It's like we talk about what you're used to. Josh Pate calls them a trust fund fan base. I mean, 17 years of dominance, and you don't remember any pain.
Right.
That's like being like Dirk Diggler for like 17 years and then having to get on Match.com. I mean. Think about the first time a girl says, "I don't think you're getting a second date," and you're Dirk Diggler. You're like, "Oh my god!"
That might be the best analogy you have ever made in over 8 years.
Real
of
pain.
JC and Morgan.
That's some real pain right there, brother. But anyway, that's my take. I know we got to get going because we got to get.
I can't think of a better note to end on than that analogy.
By the way, all of you that are club chief members that ask a Gamecock question in the chat box. This is relevant to a portion of our audience. Hit us on the other show. Mike's going to be there. The basketball questions are all good. Mike can answer them better than I can because I just get mad. So just join us for the other shows coming up.
That's all part of the Chief Sports Network for those fans of the app as we continue to add shows from across the land on that. Again, our thanks to everybody involved, including MG&A Wealth for all your financial needs. Privately owned company since 1984. Visit mgawealth.com. The cost is nothing. The benefits could benefit your family for a long, long time. Ask for Sean at mgawealth.com. For Mad Dog, for JC, this is Mike. We'll see you next week on JC and Morgan. So long.